This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. Today's video is hand stitching yo-yos on a king-size quilt base. What I've learned so far. I finally got started on this project and I wanted to share how far I have come because so far it seems to be working well. The backing was going to be like a regular quilt sandwich with the back, the batting, and the top layer. And this was going to take a pretty big quilt base. So it was easier to buy 104 inch wide material. And then I washed it or rinsed it out, that small pieces. I put it into the pieces I wanted and then rinsed them to get the sizing out. That's going to be important in a few minutes. Then, with the help of my friend, I got it all ironed and laid the bottom down on the floor. And then I took the batting. Now the batting was not wide enough, so I had to add a strip of batting down the side. That wasn't hard. Laid the batting down, pressed the next part, the top layer, and laid it down. And boy, did I breathe deep then, because I had wondered how in the world this was really going to work. You can have all these great ideas and then go, I don't know what's going to happen. So at that point, we had it laid out on the floor. Then we carefully picked it up and brought it to the dining room table, laid it down. We had figured out which was going to be the top of the bed. So we put it on one end. We pinned periodically, just like you would if you were doing a regular quilt. We put pins in to hold the three layers together. Then came the fun part, how to get started marking where things were going to go. So the first thing we decided was, where's the middle of this quilt? And so we measured all the way across, divided that in half, and found a place that we were going to have for the middle. And we started a row of pins that were running parallel to the sides so that we knew that's where it was. But we didn't need many, we just needed a few. And then we got my board. And you'd say, well, how did you decide where you were going to start with the idea of how far to put them apart? And if you remember the black strip quilt that I had just finished, we went back and looked at that because these yo-yos are the same size. I did not make these yo-yos. The person who'd like to have this quilt handed me 3 bags that contained 2,300 yo-yos that she had made. And she said, make me a quilt. So that's what we're doing. So what we decided was that from the center of this yo-yo to the next row would be 3 inches. And that seems to have worked out really well. And then the distance between the two, from the yo-yo center to the other one, was going to be, it's roughly about 4, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is the part that goes across, the 3-inch part right here. So to make this easier, I went and got, you know how I'm always using things that I've got. I got this nice 1x4 board, and I marked down for the first row 2.5 inches. Now it's going to be where my first one hit. And then I marked 3.5 inches down the side. Let me tip it up. There they are. And that has really been great. All right, so like the other one, she wanted these to alternate. So the first one was down 2.5 inches. The next one came down 4 inches. And that was going to be 4 inches to the center of the very first flower. And so when I lined them up, okay, so this would be one of those. I'm on that row now. And you can see where my mark is. Well, you're going to see some little dots, and this is the top of the quilt, so you want to be real careful. And what I did was every time I hit a mark, I took a Sharpie and I did a very light, a permanent Sharpie, and did a very light dot right where that was going to be. And I had it lined up. And again, I checked it real carefully before I did it, that I had 3 inches from there to there. All right. And you say, oops, sound effects. And then so here would be the one that I was going to do next. And there are the dots. I turned the board and using the other side and went down through there. Now, I'm going to use an applique to hook these yo-yos down. And if you look, you can see I've already gotten started. That's why I was ready to share with you what's going on, because they're really going well. And so to get to that place, I was going to have a way to hook the back, the batting, and the front together. And so what I decided I was going to try at first, and this has worked, I was going to do a star pattern. And so I came back to my dot, where my dot was, and I tried doing it just freehand without anything. I took a rest and I came back and I said, oh, I know what to do. And so I put 4 dots for the directions real lightly with that Sharpie. All right. And in the directions, I'll have it exactly how to do it. But basically is I would take a really pretty white thread and double layer. I'd knot it. I'd go down at A and up at B. I'd go down at C, come up at D. And then I went back and I did the other parts that were in between. So I'd have a nice star shape, and you'll see that in the directions. And when I looked at the back, it was really pretty. I'll show you in just a second how that looks. So every time I have one of those dots that we made, I put the little dots around it, and then I was ready to quickly go through and do that. So once I've marked it, like I've got this first column marked, I'm going to go back and probably mark this one and then go back and do all the stars on the bottom. Because they're white, it's kind of hard to see, but there was a nice star, and there's a nice star, and there's another one, and that's going to hold the layers together. When I started down the column, about the first 3 or 4, I could get them really easily, but then all of a sudden I needed to get my hand under there to work, so I found a can lid box, and I slid the box under the quilt, under all 3 layers, and then when I was getting ready to do one, if I was going to do this one right here, I'd slide the box past it, and then I had it held up so that I could go ahead and do the star on that one. And then as I moved along, I pulled the quilt towards me, and then the can lid box wherever I needed so I could get the next one. But that makes that go really fast too. So that's where I am right now. And then I come back and I sew the yo-yos on whenever I do a few of those and I do a few of the other things. It's really nice because you can have a variety. And I will tell you the way that I've learned to do the yo-yos. This is different from the other one because these are separated. They're individual. Is that being right-handed, I start over here, knot and the knot's underneath between these 2 layers, not on the very bottom, but between the layers. And then I'd applique stitch across there. Well, when I got there, I had a problem of trying to go through the bottom. So what I did is I just lift up this part of the flower that's not sewn and gently pull my thread, to put my thread over here. And then I just start, and I can easily sew back around this way and then knot off. And it goes pretty quickly. So this was the beginning of hand stitching yo-yos on a king-size quilt base. Some pointers and some tips. You may never make anything this big. You may make one smaller. You might try a twin size or a quilt size that you want to do. And those will give you some ideas of how to mark and keep it going. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this project or learned anything, please hit subscribe and like. I'm going to put a detailed description this time for you. And as I keep going on this project and come up with something that might be helpful to you before I get to the end, I'll have a follow-up video. Thank you.